Originally a 1986 arcade release from Konami before being brought over to the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988, Jackal is an overhead shooter thing where you drive a jeep along with an optional second player who drives their own jeep for some two-player simultaneous gameplay. And your main goal is to move your way upwards, rescue some POWs trapped in various prison camps, and defeat the enemy boss that resides at the very top of each of the game's 6 levels. Your jeep is armed with 2 weapons, a machine gun that's always shooting upwards, which is useful for strafing runs, and an explosive weapon that shoots 8 ways and can be upgraded about a couple times, from the starting grenade to missiles with explosive spreads. In order to upgrade your weapon, you'll need to rescue prisoners from camps. There's 2 types of camps, one occupied by a single prisoner that will grant you the missile upgrade, and another which houses many prisoners. Ultimately, you'll need to collect as many as you can and then take them to a landing pad where a helicopter will fly by and wait to pick them up, which could result in some big points being scored, which is useful since every few thousand points nets you an extra life. In addition to rescuing POWs, shooting things with your machine guns and missile weapons, you could also run over enemy troops with your jeep, which is a nice thing to be able to do. However, touch an enemy vehicle, projectile, or other potential hazard like landmines and you lose a life. But you'll respawn almost immediately at the last point you died in with nothing but grenades, basically downgrading your explosive weapon. Lose all your lives and it's game over, with limited continues allowing you to try the level again from the start. Well, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but Jackal is another great NES game from Konami and a long line of great NES games from Konami. How does this compare to the arcade version? I don't know, I've never played the arcade version. Quite frankly, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. What matters is that Jackal is a fun little game, combining some shooting action with some search and rescue elements tossed in to add to the risk versus reward factor. Having 2 weapons with different properties also helps to give the gameplay some depth. Sure, the grenade missiles might seem more useful because they shoot 8 ways, but restricting the machine gun to shooting upwards means you could do some strafing runs, take out some targets in a row, and proves useful in some cases. Or again, you could just run over some grunts and kill them like that, but only the grunts. Control is tight and responsive, the overall gameplay is straightforward enough that it shouldn't take you long to figure out how things work and get right into it. Jackal is a fairly moderate difficulty, starts off easy enough and eventually gets harder as you get farther into the game. Some of the difficulty comes from somewhat dubious screen scrolling. You can scroll in upwards, left and right, and sometimes even downwards to a limited degree, which is useful for cover from enemy fire. Thing is, the screen doesn't scroll when you're in the middle of the screen, but rather when you're more towards the edge. This makes it somewhat difficult to anticipate what's coming and could even lead to crashing into enemies and hazards that will simply pop out of nowhere because you had no time to anticipate their arrival. And more often than not, this is what would usually kill me. This is one of the cases where memorizing the level layout is key to survival. On the bright side, there's no time limit, nor is there anything pushing you to advance onwards, so you could take your time if you want. Graphics in Jackal are bright, colorful, detailed, and overall pretty good looking. The jeeps, camps, statues, some of the architecture and terrain, all nice to look at. Also, some of the military installations featured remind me of that one airport from the first Ninja Turtles game on the NES. I wonder if they have the same architect. Hell, even the explosions made it to another Turtles game. Of course, there's always the usual NES sprite flicker and slowdown that occurs whenever too much shit is going on, but on a whole, Jackal looks pretty damn slick. Which, again, shouldn't be much of a surprise. Of course, this being a Konami release on the NES, Jackal has some good musical bits. It does not have a whole lot of musical bits, however. The first 3 stages share tracks with the last 3 stages, which is a tad disappointing. There's also your stock collection of sound effects from the Konami NES sound library that, if you've played enough of their catalog, you could recognize which sounds are featured in which games. It's not a bad thing, by the way. If you got some good sound effects, you may as well spread the wealth around. Overall, if you like overhead shooters, you like jeeps, you like running over things, you'll probably like Jackal, another quality shooting game on the NES from Konami that also has a fun 2-player mode where you could play 2 jeeps on screen at once and spread more mayhem or something. Great game, well worth a shot or 2 or 20, cheap if you're looking to buy a copy or something, so yeah, Jackal. Loads of fun.